Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of Congregational Humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. I'm David Breeden, Senior Minister. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to January the 2nd, 2022. I'm David Breeden. I'm the Senior Minister at First Unitarian Society. I'm flying solo today to allow our staff and our volunteers to take some time off. And a special thanks to our tech folks, including Secular North, who make our broadcasting remotely possible. Thank you. First Unitarian Society is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. We're an intentionally and radically inclusive congregational humanist community dedicated to promoting a brave and free search for purpose, meaning, and justice. Today's assembly is online on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and also on our website. Again, I'm doing all of this solo today, so we will see how this goes. But if something begins to break up on the platform you're on, you can always go to one of the others and try that out. Or if everything fails, deep breath, get some coffee, and it will be on later because we do record and put these back out on YouTube and the website. Our assembly theme this month is Living with Intention. So this morning, relax and take some time out of ordinary time and explore living with intention. And I'm so glad that you've joined me today. Our Congregational Covenant goes like this: love is the spirit of this place, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. We remember the fourth aspiration of First Unitarian Society this morning, that is to support one another's journey toward meaning and connection in the here and the now. Today, we're going to be revisiting some recordings of music that we have done before, but maybe you didn't see it or maybe you've forgotten. And this first one is performed by Amy Hager and our very own Jacob Mullis.
Hello, everyone at FUS. This is Jacob and Amy again.
Hi.
And we're delighted to be with you in video form. Hope everyone is healthy and happy. And this first song we're going to play is called The Breaking Sound.
solid ground, memory all entwined. Love is gone, frozen in time, frozen in time, frozen in time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Besa Buil, and I'm an endorsed humanist chaplain and somatic practitioner. And I want to invite you to an 8-week series workshop called Biophilia, Seeding the Connections. We will focus on the radical act of self-care and community care, since healing and transformation occur both at the individual and collective level. We will be utilizing the arts, embodiment restorative practices, social emotional learning, and we will cultivate practices of joy to look at ourselves and others with compassion. This is how we transform systems of oppression from the inside out. Come join us. It will be a beautiful seeding of the soul.
Yes, and next week we will have a special coffee hour, and Besa will be talking about this program that's coming up. There's more details in the Friday update and on the website, and we will be getting more information out about this special program. But it's not to be missed, and looking very much forward to that. Again, more information from Besa next week, and she will be doing a special online coffee hour to discuss what's going to go on, what people would like to see, etc. Although we're obviously not doing a traditional assembly this morning, we want to take a moment to acknowledge a few joys and sorrows among our members. This morning, we mourn the death and celebrate the life of FUS member Astrid Alexander, who died on Thursday at the age of 89. Astrid joined this congregation in 1951. Yep, that's the year the building opened first, at the age of 18, and she was a member for 71 years. Astrid will be greatly missed by her family and the many friends that she made here at FUS. A visitation is planned for this coming Wednesday. Details are in the obituary that appears in today's Star Tribune and will be sent out via email to FUS members. A memorial service will be held at FUS sometime in the spring. Our condolences to all who knew Astrid. Also today, we send our support to the family of FUS members Wendy Anberg and Michael Pileggi. Their 19-month-old grandson, Anthony, was hospitalized with a rare and painful condition called staph scalded skin syndrome. After a few very rough days, Anthony is improving, and his mom, Brenna, is grateful for all the healing energy and love that people have been sending their way. We wish Anthony a fast and full recovery. FUS members who would like to mail a card to Anthony's family or to the family of Astrid Alexander, you can contact Rev Jim for that information. That's Jim at firstunitarian.org.
I'm like one of those Japanese bowls that were made long ago. I have some cracks in me. They have been filled with gold. That's what they used back then when they had a bowl to mend. It did not hide the cracks. It made them shine instead. So now every old scar shows from every time I broke, and anyone's eyes can see I'm not what I used to be. But in a collector's mind, all of these jagged lines make me more beautiful and worth a much higher price. I'm like one of those Japanese bowls. I was made long ago. I have some cracks you can see how they shine of gold.
Peter Mayer. I want to read this morning from a poem called Auguries of Innocence. This is written by William Blake. It was written in 1803, but not published during his lifetime. And the poem is built on a series of paradoxes in which innocence is juxtaposed against evil. To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. A robin redbreast in a cage puts all heaven in a rage. A dove house filled with doves and pigeons shudders hell through all its regions. A dog starved at his master's gate predicts the ruin of the state. A horse misused upon the road calls to heaven for human blood. Each outcry of the hunted hare, a fiber from the brain does tear. A skylark wounded in the wing, a cherubim does cease to sing. The gamecock clipped and armed for flight does the rising sun affright. Every wolf's and lion's howl raises from hell a human soul. A truth that's told with bad intent beats all the lies you can invent. It is right, it should be so. Man was made for joy and woe. And when this we rightly know, through the world we safely go. Joy and woe are woven fine, a clothing for our soul divine. Under every grief and pine runs a joy with silken twine. The babe that weeps, the rod beneath, writes revenge in realms of death. The beggar's rags fluttering in air does to rags the heavens tear. The soldier armed with sword and gun, palsied strikes the summer's sun. The poor man's farthing is worth more than all the gold on Afric's shore. One mite wrung from the laborer's hands shall buy and sell the miser's lands. Naught can deform the human race like to the armorer's iron embrace. He who doubts from what he sees will ne'er believe, do what he please. If the sun and moon should doubt, they'd immediately go out. To be in a passion you good may do, but no good if a passion is in you. Every night and every morn, some to misery are born. Every morn and every night, some are born to sweet delight. Some are born to sweet delight. Some are born to endless night. William Blake. Well, welcome to January of 2022. We've just lived through a week of retrospectives and reviews of the year that didn't quite go as planned for most of the people on the planet. Ralph Waldo Emerson began his great essay titled Nature with these words I want to think about today. Our age is retrospective. It builds the sepulchres of the fathers. It writes biographies, histories, and criticism. The foregoing generations beheld God and nature face to face, we through their eyes. Why should not we also enjoy an original relation to the universe? Why should not we have a poetry and philosophy of insight and not of tradition, and a religion by revelation to us and not the history of theirs, end quote. Emerson was there calling for our theme of the month, living with intention. In the essay, Emerson explicitly dismisses those religions of the book, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, by preaching, quote, why should not we have a poetry and philosophy of insight and not a tradition, and a religion of revelation to us and not the history of theirs, end quote. Living with intention. And we sometimes call it living authentically, but that phrase has gotten a bit muddied and confused by those very traditions and retrospections that the phrase tries to get out of. As Emerson would be quick to point out, one aspect of living with intention is the willingness to question our own assumptions, sometimes the deepest ones. So today, that's what I'd like to do, to encourage us all to take some of those cliches and conventions and assumptions out and take a good long look at them. All the while keeping in mind those lines from the poem by Blake, a truth that's told with bad intent beats all the lies you can invent. When I was a kid growing up on a farm, there was a huge perceived difference between country folk and town folk. Now, I'm not talking about Appalachia versus Manhattan here. I'm talking about people like me who lived on farms and people who lived in the town where the grade and high schools were 10 miles away, all 1,100 of those people. The animosity ran so deep that in the 1980s, when Walmarts began opening up and destroying family businesses in the small towns, I was expressing some sadness at that situation, but my mother's response was, them city folk never did treat us right nohow. Now, when my father died, I wanted to get his suit dry cleaned before he was buried in it. I went to the local dry cleaners and asked if I could get that done quickly. No was the answer. I explained the situation, and the owner of the dry cleaners asked, well, what's your dad's name? To which I walked out because I knew what the answer was going to be. Now, how did people who have lived within a handful of miles of each other for generations develop that kind of animosity? Now, admittedly, my father never took a shower in running water and never saw a flush toilet and never had his clothes washed in a machine until he was in the Army. But by my time, when I was around there, the country folks, most of us had running water and electricity, just like the town folks. We didn't take baths less frequently than the town folks, and most of us didn't use corn cobs or Sears catalogs for toilet paper anymore either. and we didn't wash our clothes in boiling pots of lye soap. We were kind of alike at that point, but still that suspicion and animosity remained. I experienced it from the other side. After word got out that I had a college education, more than once I heard someone say something like, "You ain't going to try learning me none of that, are you?" So, what's happening there? Well, I want to say one word, and it's not a short one, but it's a very useful term, I think. Schismogenesis. The term schismogenesis was coined in 1935 by the anthropologist Gregory Bateson. Now, nowadays, Bateson is best remembered as being married to the vastly more famous anthropologist Margaret Mead. But in his own time, Bateson was a public intellectual and an innovative thinker. We still use some of his ideas today, even though he no longer gets credit for much of those things he originated. In his book, Steps to an Ecology of Mind, Bateson defines schismogenesis as a creation of division. Now, this term derives from the Greek word schisma, cleft, cutting, right? Which, of course, has been borrowed into English as schism, two opposing factions split apart, and the word genesis, which means creation. Schismogenesis is the creation of a cleft or a division. All right. Now, Dr. Bateson claimed that we human beings define ourselves and each other through schismogenesis. Now, remember, Bateson was an anthropologist. He was describing schismogenesis as something endemic to the human mind and to human societies. Professor Bates was not attempting to fix the world with this idea of schismogenesis. He was trying to describe the world and how it works so we can better see ourselves. But schismogenesis makes a lot of sense as a useful term for me. It's our method as human beings to both self-differentiation, the us, the ego, the personal self, and also it's how we create group identification. We humans tend to find polar opposites, and then we attempt to define things by examining what those opposites create in terms of a frame. This is the way that we've learned to think about concepts and the way we've found to create solution to all kinds of challenges. I mean, think of all the ways we human beings create difference. It's gender, race, age, ethnicity, social class, generation, urban, suburban, rural, and the list just goes on and on and on. Schismogenesis is a feedback loop that functions in two directions. It continuously feeds us differences after we've noticed them, and it also continuously feeds us similarities after we have noticed those. And when it goes around, each iteration actually amplifies the last iteration, and so it's ever escalating. I have nothing in common with those people, we're pretty soon saying, or I'm exactly like those people. Or the most tragic one being, I am alone and no one understands me. Schismogenesis can also occur in terms of negative communication. No one says anything or shares anything. If I perceive that you're holding back, I'm going to start holding back. And then we're both holding back and we're really not saying anything of importance. Schismogenesis gives us things to think about and things to talk with each other about. Schismogenesis can also be at work in situations of domination and submission. I mean, that's how mansplaining and whitesplaining develops into feedback loops. Many white men fit into and understand the dynamics of a white heteronormative patriarchal structure, which brings with it assumptions concerning appropriate communication styles and things such as that. And therefore, the white men have felt confident in those circles and in those structures, and therefore they talk more and explain more, while those who have traditionally been marginalized can't get a word in edgewise. This dynamic was explored by feminists first back in the 1970s with the concept of male-identified women, meaning women who bought into the patriarchal system but learned to use it. Steel magnolias. Right? Given the concept of schismogenesis, it isn't difficult to see why, in the tiny world I grew up in, there was such antipathy between country folk and town folk. We were so isolated from and different from the mainstream of America, and we were so similar to each other that we had to go about finding little things that made us different. We were making mountains out of molehills. Schismogenesis. Schismogenesis leads to us and them thinking. It leads to viewing others as opponents rather than as partners. Now, allow me to add that Gregory Bateson was also an early proponent of the term cybernetics, by which Bateson meant, to simplify a little bit too much, feedback loops. In terms of the cybernetics of schismogenesis, that sounds complicated, but it's not. It's the creation of division, and the opposite of schismogenesis, according to Bateson, was his definition of information. So those oppositions seem a little bit weird, dividing and information. Now, how does that work? Well, Bateson defined information as, quote, a difference that makes a difference. Okay, information is a difference that makes it a difference. So we're all the time making differences, but most of those don't make any sense. The takeaway is that we human beings often find differences that just aren't meaningful. Our differences that aren't important differences in any of the situations. It's what we call a distinction without a difference, in other words. Too often, our acts of schismogenesis do not create information. They only create noise, right? For example, think about it. What's the difference between a conservative and a liberal? We can talk all day about that, but we have this schismogenesis. We have this, we say these things are very different. Those two terms seem to have taken over from Republican and Democrat just pretty well all around. In which case, what's a moderate then, right? Or Rhino, R-I-N-O, right? Republican in name only. What the heck does that even mean? How can you be something in name only? Well, we can keep all those labels going until we are in complete abstraction land and really kind of have no idea what we're talking about anymore. What's the opposite of a far-right, ultra-nationalist Christian authoritarian? I saw that term the other day, a far-right, ultra-nationalist Christian authoritarian. Let's see, would it be a far left or does this have to be a near left, right? Ultra-globalist, secular libertarian? I don't know. Just as our human minds can always imagine the largest number, and then we can always add one to that, right? The Googleplex plus one. We can always come up with yet another label, yet another word to call someone, another hyphen. Schismogenesis simply has no boundaries, and neither do our capacities for fear and hatred, unfortunately. Professor Bates provides us with a way to clarify our differentiation process so that we can see and use its possibilities and its limitations. The concept of schismogenesis is a tool in our thinker's toolbox, because the human capacity for compassion and love also are boundless when we allow them to be. And that's why we have this great theme this month, living with intention. We want to live with intention. We want to intend to have the ideas that we will have with intention or not. Without intention, we merely continue to wallow in the pit that is the creation of our own divisions. Without intention, we can even get at half-truths and partial truths, which are far more damaging than simple lies, as William Blake reminded us. A truth that's told with bad intent beats all the lies you can invent. Also remember those words of Ralph Waldo Emerson. Why should not we have a poetry and philosophy of insight and not of tradition, and a religion by revelation to us and not the history of theirs? Those are some good questions. Why shouldn't we have a worldview of insight and not of tradition? Why shouldn't we have a politics of insight and not of tradition? Why shouldn't we have a religion by revelation to us and not the history of theirs? Living with intention. Well, again, we sometimes call that living authentically, but that has a little bit of rust on it as a term, I think. As Emerson would point out, one aspect of living with intention is the willingness to question our own schismogenesis, the ways we are told that difference exists when in fact those differences are really just noise. And so that's what I invite us to do at the beginning of this new year. Let's take the Emerson challenge and live with intention, questioning always our assumptions, even our deepest ones.
The song is called Tryin'. There's too many secrets. I see them in your eyes. They occupy the silence like a long lost bed. Hazy worn out sidewalks, distant powdered sand, where the city's drifting, you and I again. 'Cause everybody's just trying to be someone. Everybody's just trying to be someone. Yeah. Everybody's just trying to be someone. Everybody's just trying to be someone. You rang, you rang, you rang, you rang. Oh, everything's gonna be alright. Oh, you're gonna find yourself in time. You rang, you rang, you rang, you rang. Caught up in the shadow, steady unraveling. Can you feel the shiver pulsing through my head? 'Cause everybody's just trying to be someone. Everybody's just trying to be someone. Yeah. Everybody's just trying to be someone. Everybody's just trying to be someone. Oh, everything's gonna be alright. Oh, you're gonna find yourself in time. Oh, I can see it in your eyes. Oh, yeah. Shivers running up your spine. Oh, I can see it in your eyes. Oh, that you're gonna find yourself in time. Oh, I can see it in your eyes. Oh, yeah. You rang, you
Thanks so much for joining us today, this first Sunday of 2022. Our closing words are by Maya Angelou, and her poem Continue. My wish for you is that you continue to be who and how you are, to astonish a mean world with your acts of kindness. Continue to dare to love deeply and risk everything for the good thing. Continue to float happily in the sea of infinite substance, which set aside riches for you before you had a name. Continue. So may it be.